Can't you see I'm no good, dear, without you? Take my lips, I want to lose them.
I want to ask you guys a question, and I think this has always bothered me, and once I asked the question, it probably have bothered these two ladies too. What is meant by, if any of your friends, if you've ever heard any of your friends or any students say this, you're trying to be black. What is trying to be black?
Using the slang and using a black scent. Have you heard that term? It's extremely problematic, to say the least. It's like there's a stereotypical way that people perceive the way particularly black women talk because of the media, and trying to be black basically means trying to be, it's terrible, trying to be like gangster, trying to like seem like you talking a certain way and acting a certain way, essentially, is what it means.
Yeah, and to go off from Shalini, I know like in TV a lot they portray black people to have, a type, like the way they talk, it's just different how it's different, and the media definitely portrays it differently. So I think when people often correlate black people with just, I think, slang, and just the way that they talk is different, I guess.
I think the funny thing is probably the three of us, even though I grew up in South Central, but as I got here and things like that, I think we've probably all three have been told by other people that you don't sound black.
Yes.
You don't talk black.
And I
always look at them and I go,
white.
what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yes, I've walked into interviews and you can see them like, oh, yeah, exactly. And it's like
we shouldn't be educated.
Yeah.
Like we don't know how to speak to people. It's like you don't sound like normal black people. What does normal black people sound like? Yeah, you know nothing about me to even sit there and make a comment to say you don't sound like normal black people. And again, I don't tell people my history. No one knows I grew up in South Central LA. But then if they find out, they go, oh. The one thing I think people need to understand about black people is in the inner cities, they're hardworking people there. And there are just a lot of people who can't get out of that community. Economics won't allow it. There are great families there. And I think the media has messed us up so bad because every time the news comes on, it's about a shooting in the community. It's about a drive-by or this. The two things that you hear about us is, or we'll say three. We're either criminals, rappers, or sports people. They never talk about the good things. They never talk about how many black judges we have, how many good black attorneys we have, the fact that we had a black general, the fact that we had a black president. Some of my friends, and we're still friends because I think living in America, you are entitled to your opinion, have told me Obama was the worst president to ever sit in the office. And I'm not sure how you can say that when 99.9% were white men. How this man sat in the office for 8 years and made this country bad. I'm still trying to digest that one. But we stay friends because I think I'd stay away from the politics with them. Because if they're saying that, they will never hear what I have to say about what I think Obama did for this country.
I think to piggyback on his story, I was talking about my mom earlier. She was assistant superintendent at Valley Christian when I was there. In, maybe 2009, she decided to move to Minnesota. And so my 3 siblings and my parents are both out there. And she got headhunted to interview for a school job out there. So the school is about 107 years old, I think. And it's K through 12. And she interviewed for the president job, and that was her main goal, and she got the job. And so she's been there for about 11 years now. And she was inaugurated the same year that Obama was inaugurated. So there were letters coming in left and right saying, we don't support a black woman president running the school. The 8 presidents before were all 60-plus-year-old white men. I can recall, her being the president, we had a membership to the country club. And I remember when we went there for her inauguration ceremony, there was about 20 family members or so. And we walked around the pool, and no joke, everyone just stopped and was like, and just all just stared at us walking in. And we kind of chuckle at it because that's just how we have to act most of the time. But I asked, why does that happen? The school is thriving. The school is doing great. She did a lot of changes with the school that were productive. And, the kids love it. She's made it more diverse. There's, all of that stuff. But why, because there's a black woman president, do we now say we don't support something, especially in the, the religious sect? So
I think a huge part of that is it doubles with what both of you are saying. And to Xavier's point about not hearing about some of the good things that black people are doing outside of entertainment or, the sectors that you normally hear us, and Lindsay's mom taking this position and doing great in it, but still, kind of being side-eyed because she's a black woman. But really, if you look at even the way that you're educated here in this country, there's a little section in U.S. history on slavery, little like that. It's almost like black people didn't even exist before slavery. Like we come in right at the time that we were brought to this country. And they talk a little bit about what happened, and then you never hear anything else about black people. You don't hear about inventions that were created by black people. You don't hear anything about legislation that was written by black people. And there's no talk whatsoever about what black people were doing before they came to this country. And so if you don't know our past, you only know one little section. I mean, really, even when you're taught about slavery in U.S. history, you're not really taught about us working to build the country. You talk about us being brought over as labor, but okay, what did we do when we were doing that labor? We were building railroads. We were moving commerce. We were, the infrastructure of this country, along with others, obviously. But that's the specific purpose for us being brought here. And you don't hear enough about that. You don't even hear about specific slaves that did amazing things within that sector. Mm-hmm. There's nothing about, or let me put it this way, nothing good about our history in those books. So why would you understand us? Why wouldn't you have anything else to go on except, I love that, not love, but when you said black scent, I never heard that before. Mm-hmm. And you also taught me punch up, punch down. I hadn't heard that either. Memorize those. But where's all the good stuff? And so here we are with this prominent melanin in our skin. So you see this when I walk in the door. You don't know anything good about me because you haven't been taught. You flick on the TV and you see me flipping my hair and talking all crazy and waving my hands around. So at what point do you get to know that I'm a person, that I have a heart, things that I'm passionate about? At what point do you get to know people for who they are? I think it's unfortunate that it's work that if we don't do it, it doesn't happen. But again, I think that's an area that we can change. And I have to say, we as a people, we have a responsibility too. Stop saying yes to certain things. We have to choose differently. It's not exactly fun when Kristi and I are on Zoom for 6 hours because we're working towards a doctorate degree, but it's something that I feel passionate about, and it's important for me to change stereotypes and show that I'm capable, and that we're capable of anything that anybody else is, not just, black people are lazy. unless they play sports or unless they, all those stereotypes. So it's really important, not just for us to know our history, but for our history to be taught in schools as well.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that racism is taught. I'm a firm believer that it's taught based on the environment you were raised in, based on who is raising you, your parents, and the school system that you're in. And if kids are constantly saying the N-word and throwing it around because it's just a word and no admin or addressing it, how do we expect to move forward? So I think that the school system is one of the biggest things that we can change to help everyone be more educated as a whole. So I think that we need to incorporate Black literature into our English classes. We need to incorporate Black history before slavery in our history classes, because right now I'm in world history and all we're learning about is the French Revolution in Europe. We don't learn about basically anything else. So that's just what I wanted to say.
Yeah, something that I'm super glad that Lindsay brought up is kind of the power of majority, and how that ties to like confrontation. So I think that like as a student at LG that tries to be a leader, the idea of calling people out on things that they might not necessarily be super knowledgeable about. And my idea is that if 2 out of 3 students at, let's say, Los Gatos are educated and understand that the N-word isn't something that is appropriate to say, the 1/3 then is going to be a minority and they're going to be out of place, right? So they're not going to be saying that because they're not going to be in an environment where a lot of people are saying that. So I think that's something that's super important for students that are watching this, is to be comfortable and feel an obligation to confronting students about their actions or their words, even if it might not be cool to say, because he's been your buddy for years, he's always been saying that. That doesn't make it okay. So I'm super glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think it's just about challenging people and challenging their views in general. We have to start having those conversations. And even, again, for me, I'm not perfect. I see things that are awkward sometimes, and I'm like, ooh, how do I handle that? And then I go home and I have 50 different ways to handle it, but right then and there, it's like a shock to the system sometimes. And so the more you guys do it, the easier it's going to get, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think most people are scared to stand up for others. So as we talk about it, people should get more comfortable, to tell people to stop using that word. Because right now, some people, they want to tell people to stop, but they feel restrained from it. They feel like, oh, like what's going to happen to me if I tell them not to? And like Harry was saying, if they're friends, they probably will be more scared. So I definitely think that we should make it more comfortable for other people to tell other people to stop, if that makes sense.
And the biggest thing is you guys got to understand, if someone is saying that you're a friend and they're asking you to do bad things, they're not your friend.
Not a friend.
That's the first thing you need to understand. Because a good friend will never allow their friend to say or do something that they know is wrong. The next thing I'm going to tell you is you have to ask yourself, and I heard this a few years ago, and it has resonated with me since I've been coaching sports and even at this high school, is when you leave this place, how do you want to leave it? How do you want to leave this place? Because sometimes that is the one thing will allow you to close your eyes. If you're sitting on your deathbed and you think back and you go, I think I did a pretty good job of trying to leave my mark on this place. And I feel comfortable with closing my eyes. And I think I ask myself that all the time now. How do I want to leave Los Gatos when I leave in 6 years, 7 years, when I feel like it's my time to step down from what I'm doing? The biggest thing that happened when I first got this job, I got this job on a whim. I didn't like the job I was in. And one night I just sat there on Graveyard and I looked and I saw Los Gatos High School needed security, and I went and I interviewed and they gave me the job. They liked me. I talked to my grandmother about it, and she said, don't question it. the Lord has asked you to go there because those kids need you, and you probably need them. And what she meant was, my upbringing with your upbringing together, we can start getting to know each other better. I think a lot of things that have happened in my life as a black man, I've been able to give back to kids here on this campus, to tell them how I deal with the N-word, how I raise my kids. I mean, I'm asked all kind of questions, and I don't shy away from answering, because I think if I don't educate you from my perspective, I'm not being an educator. You know, if I get to one kid, I've done my job, because that one kid is going to try to share what they've done to the next person. And I just think at the end of the day, you just got to ask yourself, how do you want to leave this place? How much better do you want it to be? And you don't look at quantity, look at quality, because you're not going to get the big numbers. You're still going to have those people who are racist people. But you just keep saying what you need to say. You keep stopping people when you hear them say the word. You know what? I find it offensive. And if you're going to say the word, please move away from me. I can't stop you from saying, but I'm telling you right now, it's offensive to me. I'm asking you to move somewhere else where I don't have to hear it, because it's not a good word. And you can't be afraid. You can't be afraid to challenge people. And I think when we don't challenge each other, we're not making each other better. We're not making each other better at all. So just think about that, today, tonight. How do you want to leave this place when it's your turn?
I think going off of that, though, I think the reason that a lot of minority students are afraid to challenge the white students who may say things that are offensive, at least for me, it's just because of that. It's because I am a minority. It's because it doesn't feel like there's anybody else there. And if this conversation can reach one person, and like you said, if it can reach one person, that'll be able to say, hey, that was offensive, and help me out with that, I guess that would be amazing. But I don't think I have ever called anybody out at Los Gatos High School, ever, just because I just get this clench in my throat, and I'm just like, I can't not get angry at this if I start talking about it. And it's frustrating, because I don't want them to continue saying it, but I also don't want to give them more of a reason to. And it really does go back to debunking what we see in TV and media and stuff, because the first time I ever saw an Indian character on TV that didn't have a heavy accent and wasn't there for comedic relief was, I think, 2 years ago when I started watching New Girl. That was the first TV show I ever saw with somebody that looked like me and somebody who acted and talked like me and wasn't there just to play into that stereotype. So to go back to the devil's advocate thing, I can sort of understand why people might think it's okay, because a joke has been made out of our accents for the longest time. It has been something that's been used as a joke, but it's not funny. But it's hard to tell people that, because you don't want to single yourself out more than you're already singled out, because you're just darker than everybody else.
I mean, I think it's funny, though. You guys can agree, even you guys, is every one of our nationalities has that one thing where everyone says, angry black woman, drug dealer, can't drive.
Yeah.
Privileged bombers, terrorist. We all have those things, and I just think we got to find a way to say, that's just not me.
I completely get, not feeling supported and feeling like, okay, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to stick my neck out there and I'm the only one saying something. And if I start talking about this, I'm going to get really mad. Sometimes you have to get mad. And sometimes it's a risk that you have to take. I guarantee you feel so much better that you said something than you walked away and one more person got to make fun of you and make fun of your culture. You at least walk away like, it probably didn't do any good with that particular person because they're so ignorant, but I spoke my piece. There's power in that, and you'll begin to do it more. It's like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. And then eventually people know, don't mess with her because she's not going to take it, right? And it's because of this, what we're doing right now, conversations, that's how you debunk all those stories. That's how you take away all of those stereotypes. I love that you all are here today and that we're having these conversations because, this is not a stab at you. I heard you say it, that your mom said she doesn't see color. How can you not see color? When I walk into a room, you see my color. I'm different than you, but that's okay. It's okay. Like, let's talk about those differences. That's the only way we're going to respect one another. That's the only way I'll know about your culture is if we're talking about it and that I'm recognizing you're different than me. There's no way we can't see color. And every time that we don't see color, we're swishing under the rug, prolonging all of these instances, right? Prolonging all these things that happen. It's the same thing when you walk away. If somebody degrades you in that way and you walk away, you just swept that under the rug. And I'm not trying to pressure you, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad. What I'm trying to do is show you that there's so much power in you standing up for yourself. It doesn't matter if they get mad and make fun of you even more. They're just showing their own ignorance. Yeah. But for yourself, say something.
Yeah, to go back to the everybody sees color thing, like I for sure do. Like if I walk into a room and there's one other Indian person there, I'm like, you're like me. You look like me, right? It's sort of like the sense of, if I want to like talk about something that other people not get, I can talk to you. Like it's sort of a sense of community, and that sounds bad. It sounds really terrible that I look at somebody and go, you're like me, and I look at another person and don't necessarily think that, but it's just sort of how that happens, if that makes sense.
And there's comfort in seeing yourself in other places. The comfort that you saw when you saw yourself on television. Imagine growing up playing with dolls and all your dolls are white. Mm-hmm. Like, really? There's no black babies? Can I get a black baby? Like, there's you feel validated when you see yourself in the world. When you don't see yourself in the world, that means there's something wrong with you, right? Or I would be here. I would be there. So there's nothing wrong with walking into the room and scanning the room to see how many other Indian women are there. That makes you feel like you belong there, right? And that's okay. But we have to get ourselves to a place where we feel at home or we feel like we belong wherever we go, where it doesn't matter who else is in that room. And for a long time at San Jose State, every room that I walked into, I was the only black woman. And, at first I was like, here we go again. And then it just became second nature. So what? So I'm the only black woman. That's okay. I still belong here. And you're still going to hear what I have to say. We all belong and we all have a place.
We've all been in your place, your position. I can't tell you when I was been in a place where I was just around white people at like a conference, and then 3 or 4 black people walking. Oh, thank God, I'm not the only black person here.
Yeah.
Because you feel singled out. You feel like that once that conversation starts and you're the only black person sitting inside that place. You go, everybody's gonna look at me for that answer. Like I have the whole answer for the whole black community, and none of us have the answer to that, to the black community situation. We have suggestions, we have ideas. Now, will someone listen to them? That's a whole nother story.
I think you guys have to start asking questions, or it's okay to ask questions. Those awkward, weird questions. I'd rather someone ask me if my hair, these are braids, than coming up and touching it, right? Those education pieces are okay to ask. Even if you think it might be embarrassing, it's okay to ask. And that goes for all races, all communities. And once we start to educate ourselves about different communities, we understand. I can't tell you how many people that I'm friends with now were like, Lindsay, I thought you were so mean, or so just because I'm quiet and I may not smile as much as everyone else. And they come talk to me, and they're like, oh, you're normal. Like, yes, I'm normal. So it's like ask those questions. You know, if you want to know, again, about hair, how does my hair stay like this? Ask that. Don't just look at it. You know, if you want to know anything, we're more than happy to answer. Most people are more than happy to answer those questions as opposed to pushing you off somewhere else.
One of the things that I say to the last thing I say to most classes that I talk to is that when you guys leave here to go to college, speak up, meet black people. If you ever have a friend that you meet in college that's black and you become really good friends, they go, hey, you want to come to my house for Thanksgiving? You better go. Because then you can learn a lot more about our culture sitting there in one of those big family dinners that we have. I mean, you have a chance to really get you some knowledge from the matriarchs or the women who really are. Don't ever let as a black man, don't ever let a black man tell you he runs the family. The mom runs the family. So you want to know something? She gonna know everything about that family. You can ask questions, and she'll tell you. They will tell you about their experiences growing up as black people in the South or back in the early 1900s and things like that. But what you're gonna get from us when you come to our house, once you visit us once, you are family.
Family, yeah.
You are family to us once you come and visit us once. And my friends are always saying, when your family have another dinner so we can go? So take the time out to, if you're ever invited to say, this is my chance to really, put some of these things that I hear about black people away. You have an opportunity to meet a black family, because you never know when you're going to meet a family like Lindsay's, where her mom is very well educated, dad very well educated, and have very good jobs and are the top of their field. So take that time out, because if you ever ask me, I just finished coaching my last year. I did it for 14 years. I coached Asian League basketball. And basically what that meant was anybody that had 1/16 of Asian could play basketball in this organization. There's a long story behind it. I will not go into that story, why this organization was created, but I learned so much about Japanese people, Vietnamese people, Chinese people. I can just tell you, here's one quick story. My team had just won, and the grandmother comes over to me, old school Chinese, and she says, hey, coach, I buy you lunch. And I was like, I'm good. I'm not hungry right now. And she goes, no, coach, I buy you lunch. And by that time, one of my dads sees what's going on. He goes, can I talk to him real quick? He'll be right back. He goes, she is showing you the highest respect for what you do for her grandson. Take the meal. And that was my first indoctrination of someone else's culture, how they see respect of another person, not of their descent. Because again, and when you're growing up in a country where you're predominantly that race, you don't learn nothing about any other cultures. Sometimes they don't want you to know about any other culture. But for the first time, I was taught she is showing you the highest respect that she can give you, besides it being monetary. And so I went back, and she looks at me, and I go, I am kind of hungry today. And so she took me over, and she bought me lunch, and we sat down and we chatted. Something she normally probably wouldn't do, because as her grandson told me, my grandmother is hardcore Chinese, and seeing black people is new to her. When she came over to this country, it was not something that she was willing to do, because that's not what she saw in her country. So I just say that any chance you have to talk and sit down with someone of color or anybody of any race, take that opportunity, because then you really get to know who that person really is and not what you hear on TV.
Yeah, of any race, and vice versa, what he's saying, like, not only go if a black person invites you, but invite other nationalities to your house as well. Like, the more we understand about one another, the more accepting that will be, right? I take people up all the time. You tell me to come hang out with you in Carmel for the weekend, I'm coming. Duh, of course I'm coming. But, that's how we're going to get to know more about each other's cultures and know more about each other and be more respecting. That person that said that to you, had they been around a lot of other cultures, and I think it was you that said that racism is learned, I believe that that's true. That's learned in the home. And so once you get outside of your house, and I think it's around high school that it starts to happen, that you start, finding yourself in more diverse environments, it's your responsibility at that point to understand people who are not within your cultural group. It's your responsibility to understand that not everybody is the same. And, why that person thought that was okay shows that there was not a lot of education going on in the home. So they were okay offending you. But let's change that. Let's have conversations with people sooner, so that they're not even feeling like that's even something that they would feel comfortable doing, is talking to somebody in that way. But, we have to take responsibility and have those conversations with people.
Yeah, I think that some people don't realize just how mentally exhausting it is to be the one to educate everyone around you and be expected to educate every single person about why something offends you when Google is free. And I think that, it's everyone's responsibility to do your research, and we don't have to constantly be educating you because that takes a toll on you. And if the only conversation you're having about your culture is why are you being oppressed, I can see how frustrating that is. So it is absolutely everybody's responsibility to do your research and to educate yourselves to the best of your ability about everyone else's culture.
All of me, why not take all of me? Can't you see I'm no good, dear, without you? Take my lips, I want to